Okay, so in this video, we are going to go over the SBCs. It's a shorter list than the previous video. The SBCs that I wish I did to some degree. Okay, so we're going to go just in order from top to bottom then this time. And let's just jump in. So most people, we're going to start with a card that most people don't even know exists, don't remember that it existed, that probably didn't see a ton of this card used because it was very much a hidden gem. There is a Geraldo Becker SBC that came out relatively early in the game, and you could pick between one of two versions of this card, and one was tailored for new gen, and that specifically, that card was kind of broken, and I really wish I got to use that card. So you could run this card with like a marksman or I think anything. You could have run it with a hawk. I don't remember the exact chem styles that would keep this card on a lengthy accelerate style, but it would have made him the fastest player in the game with a lengthy accelerate style. He would be a bullet past the back line. So I'll be keeping my eyes out open. I'm not using these terms right. We keep my eyes open for a card like this early in this game cycle. Something that is part of the meta as we learn it this year. Might be a similar meta to FIFA 23. It might be a different meta in EAFC 24. We'll see. But I'll be keeping my eyes open for a card like this that is a hidden gem. So less of a hidden gem we'll go to next is Dimitri Payet. And I didn't do this card, but later in the year afterwards, I regretted it because even he would have been a relatively meta card, even though he wasn't like the most broken card in the game. He was very good, and his links were very good. And later, when I would have cards like Mbappe and things like that, he would have really helped with squad building in for certain objectives or first owner game mode. A card like this I should have done. And a lot of people did and were happy to do this card. It was a very good card. Let's go over here. So Frank Ribery, this was a very expensive card earlier on in the year. And because I run an RTG, no money into the game like that, I couldn't... I don't think it was really feasible for me at the time to even get this card done, even with dumping a lot of tradable fodder and therefore kind of hindering my club in another way. Even if I did that, I still don't know if I really had the means to be able to get this card done. But based on my current goals for EAFC 24, one of the main ones being I want to get really good at skill moves. This kind of card is like perfect. At the stage of the game it was, this card was ahead of the meta and priced pretty fairly. It was just very expensive. So wasn't able to do that one. We'll see if I'm able to do a card like that this year early in the game mode. We'll see in the game cycle. Pogba, this one I don't regret doing very much. I don't regret missing very much. But, you know, again, 5-star skills was kind of slow, to be honest. His agility wasn't anything to write home about. His finishing is low, even though he's got really high shot power. His finishing is very low. There were some things about the card that weren't that ideal, but, you know, in the spirit of the 5-star skills, it was a fringe SBC where I could have maybe justified it. But of all the cards on this list, I don't really regret not doing Pogba, but he deserves an honorable mention here based on, you know, my goals for this year, to be honest. Now, this is one that I should have done. The funny story behind this Kessie card is that it was out at the same time as the Rashford Player of the Month card. And at the very beginning of the year, I had this intention last year. I was like, you know what? Rashford has 5-star skills. Maybe I should start to use 5-star skills. Now, what's funny is throughout the first at least half of the year, I didn't really learn or develop a lot of 5-star skills into my game. That Rashford card, I've wanted to get it done. And then I realized how hard it was to pack the fodder to get it done, mainly for free or for cheap. And I would have had to dump a ton of tradable resources into that card to finish the Rashford card. So I did the lower rated segment of the two. I think it might have been like an 85 and 86 rated squad, or maybe it was 84 and 85 rated squads for Rashford. That first player of the month, Rashford. And I had this intention and I realized, oh, I'm screwed. So I actually let that SBC. It was probably the only SBC all year. It was the first one I attempted where I left it part way. I didn't do that for any other SBC. If I started it, I got it done. But that player of the month, Rashford, I didn't do that. So I wasted all that fodder. So you can imagine if I start off better without making that kind of mistake this year, the club is going to look a lot better. Now, the reason why I mentioned that Rashford is that the amount of fodder I put into that one segment, I think was close to enough. It was either enough because it was the same rated squad, or it was one rating of a squad lower, so it was at least half of the value of this Kessie card. I could have easily done this Kessie card without putting, I don't think, maybe anything into it. I could pull it up, but I'm not going to waste time with that for now. But I am a bit curious to compare the segments in each of those two SBCs. Long story short, my club would have taken a very different route and would have started a lot stronger and had better success earlier on if I did this Kessie card instead of attempting to do the Rashford card. So that's kind of a funny story. There's also a bit of a story behind this Chiesa card. So one of my cousins, Christian, Chiesa is his favorite player in real life. Now, Christian, for a good portion of the year, was also playing FIFA on his console at his place. But he didn't play as much as I did, and he didn't have as much resources as I did for that reason. And he was debating doing this Chiesa card. Now, one of my I have a couple real regrets throughout the year in this game. And one real regret is that we ultimately decided for him not to do this Chiesa card. It was a mistake. This Chiesa card was above the power curve. It was a very good card. It wasn't that expensive. It was like something like 150K. And based on my philosophy at the time, it was a bit pricey because I was of the mind, like, unless you can do a card for cheap or for free with like untradables, you should be very cautious about completing the SBC because you can't get those tradable rewards back. Like, they're sunk into something that's untradable. And although that's true, I have a bit of a more flexible philosophy towards completing SBCs. And if I was thinking then, like I am now, he would have done this Chiesa SBC and he would have had fun using this card. So that was one of my main regrets that we weren't thinking along the right lines when it came to this card. I'm just going to skip over Quadrado for a sec. I'll cover him in a moment. But while I'm on the topic of the real couple regrets, the only other real one is this card here. Okay, so if you know how broken this Ramos card was. Now, here's the backstory as to why I didn't do this card. What's funny is it's completely EA. This one was actually EA's fault. Everything else here, my responsibility. And even I could have, despite EA's significant flaws, I still could have completed this card. So it's still partly on me for sure, actually. I should say that. But this Ramos card was out during a time where on PC, people could not launch the game for the life of them. I was troubleshooting. I was learning all sorts of stuff about like IT related stuff along the way. I was doing everything possible. And for like close to 2 weeks, the vast majority, if not all of the PC player base, but at least the vast majority of the player base, including myself, couldn't play games. So if I couldn't play games or I couldn't log in, I couldn't get rewards, and I couldn't, at the time I had already done Mbappe, and I was not as stacked in the club as I had been at other times before and after this. So because I wasn't able to log in or accumulate any rewards, I chose not to try to get this Ramos card done, even though I could have just put a lot of tradable fodder. I could have bought fodder. I could have accomplished I could have gotten this SBC done, but at a much higher cost than I would have been used to. It still wasn't a part of my philosophy at the time. And EA really, really messed up. Like, if you run what is supposed to be a AAA game, and you and a portion of your player base cannot launch the game was so bugged out the way it would think it was launching and playing and running, and it wasn't. And this was a huge issue at the time. Granted, people who are on console probably didn't care. Most people probably wouldn't know, because if you were on console, it's not really something that you would worry yourself about. Doesn't matter, right? If anything, people on console are happy. I'm not someone who has any clue how to hack games or whatever. But I know people are afraid of playing PC players because some people assume that everyone's somehow hacking. Like, most people who play on PC are just like regular players. And what's funny is I think I played way less hackers for some reason in my experience than what a lot of other people seem to play, and they were on console. And I'm not sure how or why that works. If there's really logic behind that or not, I'm not too sure. But long story short, I don't obviously like hack this game at all. And I barely ever played anyone that did that. And like I said in the previous video, the only experiences I had with that seemed to be in like the draft game mode for some reason. Anyways, all that is to say, I should have done this Ramos card. This card was broken for like the next number of months. He haunted so many people, and so many people regretted not doing this card. So those are the two most significant mistakes I made in the year. A runner-up, if I had to pick a third one, it'd be this Quadrado. This guy burned me a few times early in the game as well. If someone knew how to use this card properly and was like meta rat, like, and I don't mean that term in a bad way, but that's just a popular term we use, obviously. This card was a great card. Should have done it. Should have done this card. Anyways, not going to go into too much more detail. Should have done this card. Wasn't too expensive. It's pretty expensive at the time, and I didn't have that much at the time because it was earlier in the game mode. But nonetheless, I would have had a lot of fun if this was this coming year, EAFC 24, this kind of card comes out at the same price point, I'm doing that Quadrado card and working that into the squad, like basically 100%. So this is like just an honorable mention. Throughout the year, I wasn't like a fan of Smalling. I didn't think he was that good, but then I started to realize if he has certain special cards with enough pace, what I learned, and many others learned as well, is that if you have enough pace with this Smalling card, it's a very broken card. Like, his Team of the Year card was actually way more meta than I thought it would be. So honorable mentions for this version, I could have justified doing this card. Could have also justified Maldini. Now, at the time this card came out, I did have some very meta center back options from what I recall. But there were times later in the game cycle, not too long after this expired, where I kind of regret not doing this card. It would have been helpful for especially first owner game mode, especially having not done a player like Ramos or other center backs for a first owner game mode. Maldini would have been very helpful. So I wouldn't make a mistake like that again this year, especially now with the value of icon chemistry. They're going to be much more valuable. So 3 last ones to go over. Danjuma was a relatively affordable SBC very, very, very early on in the game cycle. Even if I were to use him as a super sub, I should have completed this SBC. Excuse me. I'm going to wrap up here in a minute. This Insigne, I was debating at the time doing this card. He, at the very least, could have been a super sub. Was a lot of people's super subs. Was a very good super sub. And for that reason, I should have done this card, partly because it was quite affordable. And the last one, which was probably one of the biggest X factors for like a card that went under the radar, but this card was 5-star, and a lot of people actually really like this card. Look, high-low work rates, shorter player, would have felt amazing on the ball. 5 star, 5 star. I mean, can play so many different positions. This was, I think, a FUT birthday card. Yeah, FUT birthday. You give this card a hunter and you are laughing. Like 93 finishing, 98 pace. Look at those dribbling stats. Passing is reasonable. 5 star, 5 star. I'm going to repeat that over and over here. 88 stamina. Obviously a weak player. This card isn't like the perfect card. It's not like super overpowered card. But again, along the philosophy I have now, if I applied that to this coming year and a card like this Pedro card came out, it wasn't very expensive from what I recall. It was like medium budget, like pricing. It was very reasonable. At the time, it was awkward to link because I think this was before, and again, I have to I could verify these things if I pull it up, but I'm not going to waste time doing that. Despite what someone might believe, I'm trying to make these videos as, succinct as possible, contrary to what would probably be popular belief. But this card was not very easy to link. There's very few good Lazio players, if any, in the game. So you're relying on using someone like Pep Guardiola, a Spanish manager, with like 5 total Serie A players, so that you get 2 chem points out of 3 for Serie A, and you get the last one with like a Spanish manager. Because like I said, I don't think Ramos was in the game at this point. From what I recall, Ramos came like some maybe like a month later or a few weeks later. So what's funny is if I did both of them, I probably would have been incorporating them into a bunch of my teams, to be honest with you. That would have been the real meta. If that situation came up this year, I plan to be ready for that kind of thing. So with all that being said, I'm glad I'm recording these videos. I hope if you were watching this, you're enjoying this. If you have any kind of, you want to interact with me, you want to leave a comment for me to reply to or anything like that. If you want to interact with me, I'm sure I'll be noticing comments. I know everyone says this, or a lot of people who upload videos say this. So it is what it is. If you want to subscribe, that'd be cool. I don't think I'll be hopefully needing like positive reinforcement, but I think at some point, I want to basically, and again, I'm not trying to project or anything. I want to do this in the long run. That's my intention. At some point or another, if people enjoy listening to this and watching some stuff along the way, hopefully you're interested enough at some point to subscribe and whatever. But I'm just saying, if you want to interact with me, part of doing this for any person who's making videos and uploading them online, hopefully those people, and I would fall under this category, some of those people want to legitimately kind of develop a little bit of a community, right? Even if it's small, and even if it's a few people. So if you have some, if any of these players, for example, you missed them, or you completed these SBCs and you really like them, and they served your club really well, feel free to let me know. If you have any other comments, let me know. Take care. Hope you're doing well. I got a boogie now. I got a long day ahead of me. Got a lot of training to do here. And I will see you in the next video. All right. Take care. All the best.